Hi, I'm Steen Woodwork, and I'm going to be talking about this Milwaukee 18-volt cordless 12-inch miter saw. I've been using this saw for about a month and a half. I've used it for a variety of tasks, including cutting fence boards, decking, finished handrail, and I've been very pleased so far. I'm sure by now, if you're looking into this saw, you've probably read up on all the features. You know that it's dual bevel, you know that it has 60 degrees over on the right side and it goes over to 50 on the left. So I'm not going to go too much into all of the features. Specifically, I'm going to talk about its performance in my experience and what I think about the saw in general. First off, I get a lot of comments of people saying, wow, that's a big saw. That saw looks heavy. Honestly, it's not. Compared to other 12-inch saws, this thing is much lighter. This thing is lighter than the DeWalt 12-inch. It's lighter than the 10-inch Makita. And overall, when you pick it up, you're surprised at how light it is. There are a couple optional items. They have these little handles that can mount to the side here. I find those to be a little bit awkward because it widens the footprint of the saw quite a bit, so I took those off. Another thing that I did take off, this dust boot was fairly narrow. I bought the dust boot from a Festool Capex. I believe it was around $20, and I bought it from a Festool dealer. And I was able to clip this right onto the existing dust shroud. The guard actually slides right into it almost as if it's been made for it. Now you have to note that you also have to slide these wings out to accommodate for the width of that dust shroud. But I found that the trade-off was more than worth it because I was getting excellent dust collection with this saw boot, this dust boot on here. It was much better than the stock one, as you can see. And with a 2 1/4 inch vacuum hose running to my extractor, I was having very, very little dust escaping from either side of the saw. As far as power is concerned, I found that there was nothing lacking in this saw. I know that a lot of people want to talk about power and which one's the most powerful, but power to me takes second place to accuracy. And that is what I was most concerned about when it came to this saw, was accuracy. I tested that out cutting some pre-finished handrail. It was 2 1/2 inches wide by 1 1/2 inches thick, and I found it to be more than adequate. I did take this saw blade off, the one that comes with the saw, and I put on a full kerf FS tool blade. I believe it was an 80 tooth, and I was having no problems getting straight, clean cuts where the blade wasn't deflecting. Most of the time when I make a cut anyway, I do a full kerf cut and then I slide it over and do a half kerf up to my line. And I find that to give me the best results as the blade is only cutting through half the capacity. There wasn't really anything about the saw functionally that I found that I wasn't liking. I had a couple people ask me if the saw performed differently on lower capacity batteries. This is the 12 amp hour. And this is the 3 amp hour high output, and you can tell by the sound of the RPM that the motor isn't starved of any power. The only difference will be how long the saw will run on either battery. As far as runtime is concerned, I was able to run an entire day cutting that white oak handrail on this battery, and then half of the next day. That was one thing I was very pleased with, was the amount of work I was able to do on one battery. And that being considered, if you have 2 batteries, which I would recommend, the other battery would charge before you would go through this battery, so you can just keep swapping them out if you needed to. One feature that I really do like is these flat sides on the actual body of the table of the saw, and they already have holes tapped for those handles I was talking about earlier, so that if you wanted to attach a custom-made set of miter saw wings, you could easily do that. As far as setting up the saw out of the box, this one was in good shape. I found I had to do very little to the sub fences, and if you do have to do something to the sub fences, there's these ribs on here that you can just take some sandpaper and a block and lightly sand, adjust the fence one way or the other inside the body of the saw. I had to do some minor adjusting of the detent plate in order to make it so that it cut 45s perfectly and it was cutting perfectly square. Out of the box, almost every saw that I've ever used has to be adjusted and fine-tuned, and this one I found to be on the lower end of work from other saws that I've used. So all in all, I would say that if I had a row of cordless miter saws from various manufacturers sitting in front of me, I would find myself grabbing this saw more and more often. Oh, okay. You know Daddy's videoing, making a video, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Off you go. One of the main reasons is it's light. It's easy to carry, it's not bulky. I can carry it with one arm just fine. If I have to carry it around a job site, weight is definitely going to be a factor, especially if I'm going up and down stairs. Another big reason is that it runs on a single 18-volt battery, whereas other manufacturers you have to use 2 batteries to run the same saw, and some of those batteries are expensive. So instead of having to own a set of 4 batteries to be able to have one set you can switch off of, I can just use one battery and just have 2, one on the charger, one on the saw, and I'm totally set. Tied for second place in reasons I would pick this saw is simply because I can switch out this dust boot and get good dust collection as opposed to different saws. For all those factors in mind, I find this to be a very adequate saw, one that I would reach for more often than any other manufacturer. Now, I do have to mention that this is the second saw that was sent to me. The first saw had an issue with the head not being parallel to the rails. If you have yourself a saw that has that problem, I would say that's an exception to the rule, and you should take it back and get a different one. I hope that the information I gave you in this video was helpful. This is my honest opinion from my experiences. If you have different experiences, feel free to comment about them. Basically, we're trying to put as much information out there for whoever's buying it. So the more information we can put out about a tool, the more information we have to educate ourselves before purchasing one. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope that this helped you.